Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is a channel where I paint my face, turn my camera on and talk about some books. I recently realized that I almost never read books right after they've come out. I will always spend so much time pre-ordering books, getting really excited for their releases, making anticipated releases, videos where I talk about all the books that I'm excited to read, but then I take ages to actually read those books. And today I am turning that around. This list of books are all books where I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to be getting to them anytime soon, and this video is my attempt to turn that around. So I'm going to vlog reading all of these books for you, but before we jump into the vlog portion of this video, let's go through the list of books that I want to include. And she ain't small, she ain't itty bitty, she's a long list, so we might be here a little while. So grab a snack, grab a glass of wine, grab a hot drink, grab something, maybe not a hot drink because it's the middle of summer. I'm getting off track. Let's talk about the 5 books that I want to read in this vlog. First up, we've got The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This is a sort of spin-off, I guess, to The Soulmate Equation by this same author duo, and it follows one of the characters who was in The Soulmate Equation, and everybody loved that character. Their name's Fizzy, and they are the best friend of the main character in The Soulmate Equation. Everybody loved that character, everybody wanted to see her romance, so the author duo delivered. We asked, they delivered. I love it when that happens. I am a little worried though that this might feel a little bit fan servicey, considering it was kind of prompted by the fans being like, I want to know what happens with Fizzy, but hey, it could be good. I don't know. I've had some interesting luck with Christina Lauren lately, so we shall see. As for what it's about, it says they're crafting the perfect Hollywood romance for the screen, but the chemistry behind the camera might be the real story. Felicity Fizzy Chen is lost. Sure, she has an incredible career as a beloved romance novelist with numerous bestsellers to her name, but when she's asked to give a commencement address, it hits her. She hasn't been practicing what she's preached. She hasn't been in love. In lust, sure, but that swoon-worthy, can't stop thinking about him, all-encompassing feeling, nope. And suddenly, the optimism she's encouraged in her readers starts to feel like a lie. Connor Prince, documentary filmmaker and single father, love the single father trope, loves that his work allows him to live near his daughter. Then his profit-minded boss orders him to create a reality TV show, putting it all in jeopardy. Desperate to find his romantic lead, a chance run-in with an exasperated Fizzy offers Connor the perfect solution. What if he could show the queen of romance herself falling head over heels? But when production on The True Love Experiment begins, Connor wonders if that perfect match will ever be in the cue cards for him too. I cannot wait for this, but let's not spend too long dwelling on it. Let's go through the other books in the list too. The second book on this list is Love Struck by Laura Jane Williams. This is another book where I am familiar with this author. I read The Love Square, I think, by this author, which was a kind of an interesting take on a love triangle in which there was like 3 men and the 1 girl. So I am keen to read more from this author, but as for what it's about, it says Becca Calloway is calling it. She's ready for Mr. Right and she's ready now. She even goes as far as to hold a manifestation ceremony for him, and when she receives a text from her ex 5 minutes later, she knows it's a sign. The problem is she doesn't know which way it's pointing. Should Becca reply and reignite things with her old flame Mike, or delete and block, moving forward with the new man in her life? Becca has one choice with 2 ways this could go, and in Love Struck, you're about to see them both. I am intrigued. I wonder if this will be like another love triangle kind of situation. If it is, I'm all for it because this author wrote that love triangle really, really well in Love Square. The next book is going to be Lore Olympus Volume 4 by Rachel Smythe. Luckily, this will be a very, very quick, easy breezy read. It's basically a Persephone and Hades romance retelling set in a modern setting where all the fickle gods, they retain all their fickleness and all their ridiculousness, but they all have mobile phones, they live in skyrise cities, and Persephone is this sort of very naive young girl who's coming to Olympus for the first time, stumbles across Hades through a series of very unfortunate events, and strikes up a bit of a friendship with him, and I just can't wait to see their romance bloom. But it looks like from the cover of this book, maybe that's not the romance that's going to be blooming in this particular version of it, but yeah, this is going to be the next one. Then we've got Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is the next book in her series of STEMinist books. So you've got Love Hypothesis, Love on the Brain, and Love Theoretically. Basically, each of these follows a woman who is working in the STEM career, which is very much predominantly male. And so it deals with all of the prejudice and everything that they face from the men and from other people in their sort of career path because they are a woman, as well as them falling in sweet, sweet love as well. And it's written in this sort of old days of Wattpad kind of way that is just absolutely addictive. But as for what this one is about, it says, the many lives of theoretical physicist Elsie Hanaway have finally caught up with her. By day, she's an adjunct professor, toiling away at grading labs and teaching thermodynamics in the hopes of landing tenure. By other day, Elsie makes up for her non-existent paycheck by offering her services as a fake girlfriend, tapping into her expertly honed people-pleasing skills to embody whichever version of herself the client needs. Honestly, it's a pretty sweet gig until her carefully constructed Elsieverse comes crashing down because Jack Smith, the annoyingly attractive and arrogant older brother of her favorite client, turns out to be the cold-hearted experimental physicist who ruined her mentor's career and undermined the reputation of theorists everywhere. And he's the same Jack Smith who rules over the physics department at MIT, standing right between Elsie and her dream job. Elsie is prepared for an all-out war of scholarly sabotage, but those long penetrating looks, not having to be anything other than her true self when she's with him, will falling into an experimentalist's orbit finally tempt her to put her most guarded theories on love into practice? I mean, I cannot wait. And lastly, we've got The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson, which is by no means a tiny book, but I am so excited for it because I rated Her Majesty's Royal Coven 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. I just missed out on seeing this author live because I was really, really ill the day Juno Dawson had a sort of interview thing at Waterstones Piccadilly. I got tickets and everything, but I got so ill that I had to go straight home, and I was so mad at myself because I really wanted to get my book signed. But either way, I cannot wait to crack into the sequel. As for what this is about, it follows a group of young women who form this really close bond and almost sisterhood as they were young girls coming up into Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is the coven that kind of like takes prevalence over England. However, the story is predominantly set a number of years later when all of these girls have split off in their own different paths. Some of them have left Her Majesty's Royal Coven, one of them heads it up, and one of them has left the coven and created her own coven called Diaspora, which was essentially created because she experienced a serious amount of prejudice in Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and she wanted to create somewhere that was more welcoming, more open to women and witches of color and of different sexual and gender related orientation. And that was all things that she didn't think Her Majesty's Royal Coven was ever going to provide because of the prejudicial nature of that society. These women, though, are forced back into each other's lives once again and forced to sort of repair their relationships and figure out where they stand with each other after the prophesied sullied child makes an appearance, and they all have differing perspectives on how to deal with that particular situation, whether they try and destroy the child or give the child a chance and try to raise this child and understand why they were prophesied to become the sullied child in the first place. It is an absolutely enthralling read, and I cannot wait to get stuck into the sequel. So this is the TBR for this video. It is by no means small, but I am excited, and there's a lot of romance on here which are quick and easy reads for me. So as for what I'm gonna get stuck into first, I've just read a Christina Lauren. I just read Something Wilder, so I kind of want to do something different. Maybe I'll pick up Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. We'll crack straight into this one, and I will update you on my thoughts when I have some. For right now, it's a Sunday evening, so I am going to open up all the windows, let the fresh air in and some cool air. I've got them all shut right now because there's people having barbecues outside and it's very, very loud, playing music and everything. Didn't need that in the background of this video, but I'm gonna open all that up. I'm gonna sit on the couch with a cider and my book and maybe some ice cream, just everything cold, and read and just enjoy the chill Sunday evening before going to work tomorrow. The exciting thing though about work tomorrow is that I am officially starting like being a producer, I guess, on this little marketing video that we're creating, which I'm really, really excited for, and the filming starts tomorrow. So yeah, that's something for me to look forward to. Obviously I can't share with you guys any clips of that or anything because it is a work related piece of work, but I can point you towards it once it comes out. So yeah, that's the plan for tonight. That's what's happening tomorrow. It's gonna be a full-on work week, so the updates are gonna be a little bit sporadic. This vlog might last a little while, but yeah, that's the plan. So I will see you when I have something to say about this lovely book. It is Monday afternoon and my slightly bedraggled self is now home from work, and I just wanted to come in here to say hi and give a quick update on Love Theoretically, which I picked up last night, but only read like 20 or so pages, so really picked up predominantly this morning. I'm now 70 pages in, and already the tension of this read is sky high. I am remembering why Ali Hazelwood's books are just so compulsively readable, and I am loving it. However, I will say that the main male character, the hero in this, whose name is Jack, he's gonna have to do some serious work before I will start to like him, because at the moment he's been a real dick. Like, he's really being rude, and understandably, like, what he knows about our main character Elsie is that she's in a relationship with his brother, and as far as Jack's aware, his brother thinks that Elsie is a librarian, but then Jack finds out obviously that she's not a librarian, she's a theoretical physicist, so he thinks that she is lying to his brother. So I can understand kind of why he's being particularly aggressive and rude to her, because he's really protective over his little brother, but also, like, come on dude, like, don't be ridiculous. Still maintain some level of civility. But the animal attraction between the two of them is definitely already there. I love that Elsie's like, screw you, I don't care what you think, I'm gonna treat you how I want to treat you, rather than going down that people-pleasing path. I'm definitely feeling very called out with just how people-pleasing she is, because I can very much be the same, like change my persona based on who I'm talking to, and that's something she very much does, and I assume it's something that she's going to struggle with throughout the read. So yeah, that's definitely making me feel really called out. I also like that there is diabetes representation in this story, and it's very much a part of Elsie's world. It's very much a motivation as well behind why she wants to become a tenured professor with the university, MIT I think it is, because she's really struggling to afford her insulin. She's having to ration her insulin, which obviously is a just horrible path to be on, because she can't afford it because it's so expensive in the US, which is an issue that I'm not even going to get into, because one, I'm not diabetic, so I feel like I have no place to, and two, it is such a problem, and I don't want to start ranting about how just ridiculous and horrible it is that insulin costs so much money when it's literally a like life or death treatment that some people need. Anyway, that's definitely part of why she wants this tenured position, because she needs the money and the healthcare and everything in order to afford her insulin, and that's kind of making me hate Jack a little bit more, because he's obviously trying to get in the way of that, not knowingly because he doesn't know that she's diabetic, but he's unknowingly getting in the way of potentially her being able to solve a really risky health situation. Other than like all of that and the fact that I'm kind of not liking the hero at the moment, I am really enjoying this book. The tension is there, the angst is there. I love how Elsie is just like, she's so into theoretical physics, and she's like constantly talking about it throughout the book as well. So I feel like I'm learning things as I'm reading, and her relationship with her best friend is just so great. Their banter is amazing. So yeah, I'm loving the main character, Elsie. Not so much the other guy, Jack. Oh my God, the misogyny is already coming out in terms of the discussion she's having with some of the other professors, because she gets into a situation where she's essentially in the men's bathroom with Jack, and these other professors come in that are at her table, and they're talking about how they don't want to go with her for the tenure position, they want to go with the other candidate because they think that she's of like pregnant and like marriageable age, and so she's gonna be getting pregnant soon, and they're gonna have to cover her classes and everything. And I'm like, excuse me, one, none of your business. Two, why would you assume that? Three, don't be a dick. Like, that shouldn't come into job interview sort of considerations at all. It's not relevant to the job, it's not relevant to her expertise, and it's not relevant to how well suited she is for the role. So when that happened, I was thoroughly mad, and I did appreciate that Jack seemed to get a little bit mad about it as well. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this book so far. Very ranty, very rambly thoughts, but yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm gonna be doing more reading tonight because Ben and I are having a pretty chill evening, I think, in tonight. We've both had very long days at work. I do want to update quickly on the little project I'm working on at work, which I think I told you about, where I'm basically producing a marketing video. We got a lot of the filming done today, and it was really good. The person that's like been starring, I guess, in the marketing video is really excited about it. We finished scripting it, finished the shot list. I mean, everything is really going very smoothly, and we got permission from the client that we need to get permission from in order to film at their offices. So yeah, it's all going super smoothly, and I'm even going to get the chance to do the first round of editing, which is exciting because it's not something that I've ever done before for a work video, and I haven't ever used Premiere Pro before. I do all my video editing for BookTube on iMovie, so it'll be fun to test out my skills on Premiere Pro and potentially move a lot of my BookTube editing across to that if I find that it's a little bit easier and more seamless to use. So yeah, that's kind kind of the update on work and everything at the moment. It's kind of exciting. It's definitely turned around since everything that happened last week, which is good. And yeah, so that's the update. I will check back in with you when I have more to say about this lovely book. I am probably going to speed read this gal because it's so enjoyable. So I will see you very soon. Hey, it is Wednesday lunchtime and I am on my lunch break and figured I would take the opportunity and the fact that I'm wearing makeup right now to update you guys on this reading vlog, what I've been reading, what I have finished, and what I am reading next. So first up, I have finished Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this book 4 stars. I really, really love the characters. I thought Elsie was relatable on an entirely new level, and I love the way her sort of anxiety and her need to be like a people pleaser and have different versions of herself, I guess, depending on who she's talking to, was really, really thoughtfully included as a part of her character, a part of her growth, a part of her development, rather than a plot device that'll cause tension or cause like cute moments in the relationship. I thought our hero, Jack, he was a bit of a dick at first. I mean, you know from my first update, I think, on this book that I didn't love him as a character from the outset because I just thought he was a little bit forceful. He was rude. I just didn't like his vibe, and I didn't like the fact that he was basically completely unwilling to take a chance on the fact that she might get this research position that she's going for at MIT. But the way that particular plotline developed was really interesting because it was less about him saying you won't get it because I don't think you're good enough, and there were other powers at play that meant that she likely wouldn't get it. And I think the way that he resolved his previous actions towards her was really interesting, really forthright, and I began to really fall in love with his character. I think their relationship was really beautifully developed, although I will say that the smut and the sex scenes would get a little bit weird at times because they would talk about all sorts of random things throughout, and things that I wouldn't consider pillow talk, like the fake relationship that Elsie had with Jack's brother, and like family dynamics and trauma from each of their family relationships that they were dealing with. I'm like, these aren't sorts of things that really make for a very turn-on inducing, sort of enticing sex scene, I guess. So it was just a really, really strange. And I will say that the book, in terms of the relationship development, had a really unsatisfying ending. Don't get me wrong, I loved the third act conflict. I thought it was tension-filled, I thought it was angsty and amazing, and I loved that the main character Elsie was given time to be pissed off. Like, it wasn't a situation where Jack did something astronomically wrong that you can't forgive him for, but he did do something wrong, and Elsie was given the time to just be pissed and to just sit in the fact that she was really pissed at him, and I liked that. Like, there wasn't any explaining away. Her friends were like, yeah, be pissed. But the way that the situation, I guess, was resolved was kind of incomplete, and it was a real opportunity to have a swoon-worthy moment where, you know, the author chronicles the look on Jack's face when this situation happens or something like that, and it was kind of just missed, and it kind of was left a bit ambiguous. Like, if you know the book and you know the context of how it ended, then it's clear what Elsie was trying to say to Jack, but it's not directly said, so it feels a bit ambiguous. I will say as well that I really loved the way feminism was weaved into the story. I really loved the way that Elsie reacted to adversity by going, you know what, screw you guys, I'm gonna prove to you that I deserve to be here. There was a manipulation plotline that was explored in this story as well that I thought was really interesting too, especially because it exposed a sort of situation in academia that I didn't really know was present, but definitely makes sense because of the power dynamics at play. And the last thing I will say is that whilst the science included in this book didn't make a lick of sense to me, I loved that it was included because it made all the characters feel even more three-dimensional, because you could feel the passion that they had for what they were talking about, the science, their careers, all that kind of thing. So yeah, it didn't make a lick of sense, didn't understand a single bit of it, and it was a lot like that situation where you stumble around fantasy characters' names. For me, it was stumbling around scientific terminology, but hey, it was just really beneficial to the character development and the world development of the story. So yeah, 4 stars, really enjoyed it, but slightly unsatisfying ending, which kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But now I'm moving on to Love Struck by Laura Jane Williams. This is the beautiful, I think, Waterstones exclusive edition of the book, so it's got this like lightning strike on the side. And yeah, I am 62, not even 100, 62 pages into this so far, and I mean, it's really interesting. I struggled a little bit at the first part of this book because, I don't know, the language was just so different to Love Theoretically that it took me a minute to like switch my mindset. But once I got in, I really started enjoying it, and I realized there's sort of a split timeline thing going on here where there's a pivotal moment, and it says it all in the blurb, so none of this is spoilers. There's a pivotal moment where the main character receives a text message from her ex, as it says in the blurb, and then the timeline splits, and you get these chapters where at the very top it says she doesn't text back, and it tells you what would have happened in her life if she didn't reply to the text from her ex. And then the sort of other side of that is that you get chapters with the header at the top saying she did text back, and you get the timeline of what would have happened if she had have texted back. And I'm really intrigued to know, one, how different those timelines are going to be, and whether it's going to be like there's a clear one that you're kind of rooting for, and also how that's all going to be resolved. Is it all going to be like it was all just a dream at the end, and based on what you learned through those different scenarios, she then decides what she's going to do and it's left kind of ambiguous? Or is it going to be like these two timelines, something happens that merges them back together and the same result happens no matter what? Like, I'm really just intrigued to how that's all going to get wrapped up. So yeah, that's what I'm feeling about this book so far. I'm loving the main character. I'm loving her friendship with her besties and the vibes, and the fact that she's like praying to the gods to just reach her goals for what she wants to achieve next in her life. Like, she really wants to be married and have kids. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the steps forward that we're making in romance plots where it's more than just marriage and kids for female main characters. But sometimes it is just nice to take a step back and have a character who just wants to be a mum and wants to be a wife. And I kind of like that. That's what I'm reading at the moment. I'm going to keep reading this. I'm going to get back to work, and before I do that, I'm going to film a couple more videos because I've got so much content that I need to plan over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to do all that, but yeah, I will update you in a bit once I've read a bit more of Lovestruck. We are officially on the home stretch of this video, but are we really? Because the last time I read the prequel to the book that I'm reading, like the book that came out just before it, I probably spent half an hour alone talking about it. We're on the home stretch and that we're on the last book, but are we on the home stretch really? Because will this next book just be 45 minutes of me talking about it? I don't know, but anyway, let's talk about what we got to before we got to this book. So first up, not Love in Other Words, that's Christina Lauren. This is Lovestruck by Laura Shane Williams. I DNF'd this book. I DNF'd about 160 pages in because as much as I love the concept of the split timeline, of these two different worlds, of these two different pathways, I guess, that the character could have gone down, I'm not liking the fact that there's no like obvious character that I'm supposed to be rooting for, which means that I'm not invested in either of the different plot lines, which means I'm getting bored, which means when there are cute moments, when there are sweet moments, when there are like sexy moments, I just don't care. And I mean, it's kind of obvious from the front cover who's probably going to be the guy that she ends up with, but like it's not obvious from the actual inside of the book, and there's just not an obvious connection being made. I mean, the rest of the book is fine. It's just, I'm just really bored. And there's like these other elements of the plot that they're trying to loop in, like this is pregnancy that's happening in one timeline, and I don't know if it's happening in both. It would make sense if it's happening in both because the whole pregnancy thing, like she got pregnant before this split happened, but it's not being like talked about in the other timeline, so I'm getting really confused. I DNF'd it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because it just kind of bored me, and I love the concept and I might come back to it later, but in terms of this video, not going to. Then I picked up, where is it? Lore Olympus Volume 4. By Rachel Smythe. I read 1, 2, and 3 again before picking up this one because I like to just remind myself of the world and the characters and get really invested. And man, I thought this book was amazing. I mean, let's go into it. The first thing I noticed, first off, was that a decent amount of time was spent at the beginning of this book discussing Hades' relationship with Minthy. And I'm probably going to pronounce all these names wrong, just putting that out there, but it was spent discussing that relationship and how toxic it is, because that was never really talked about in the previous books because it very much focused on Persephone rather than anything else. But I liked that you got that time with Hades and Minthy to really understand their relationship and understand how it devolved when Persephone kind of came into the picture and how it was already toxic before she did. So it made you root for Hades and Persephone even more. Other thing I noticed about this book is the art style, in that the way Persephone is drawn changed significantly going into like the second half of this book. She's given more mature hairstyle, she's given longer hair, she's drawn differently in her body postures, like she's more confident, she stands more on her own, her language is less immature, she's less overt with her sort of affection towards people, and it's just making her as a character feel like she's grown so much more just in the space of this novel alone than in the previous 3, because obviously everything that she's gone through, she's finally facing it and dealing with it and making the decision of how she wants to approach her life now that she's dealing with those situations, and making the decision now of how she's going to let those things impact on her. And I really enjoyed the fact that the way she was drawn was so different. It just gave Persephone such a different vibe. What I also loved about this story is that you get more time with Hades and Persephone actually figuring out their relationship, and you get a couple of sweeter moments, but then you also get Persephone unexpectedly being the one who's like, no, like you need to sort things out with Minthy before we start anything. Like she becomes so much less impulsive and so much more controlled and mature and everything after everything that she's been through, whereas Hades becomes this impulsive guy who just wants to be in a relationship with her because he's sure that he's in love with her, but he's also not sure. Like he ends up being the one who's being second guessing and confused and everything, whereas Persephone is like very much secure in herself as she goes through this book. And then also I loved that the situation that happened at the end of volume 1 is really confronted in this, and Persephone deals with it, and she deals with it on her own, and you get more context about who she was before she came to Olympus and how she has the name Persephone and why she changed her name from Cora to Persephone. There's definitely a lot of hints dropped about that in this book, which I really enjoyed. It's not fully explained, but it's explained enough to the point that I'm really intrigued. So yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I'm obsessed with the series. I can't wait for the next one that comes out in October. But yeah, that is what I thought on this. And now the final stretch book is The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. Now, if you saw my video on Her Majesty's Royal Coven, you know that I spent a very long time purely talking about that book because I was obsessed with it. I'm expecting probably the same to happen with this one. This is the sequel to that book, and basically what happens in the first book is it follows these 4 women who are all connected to Her Majesty's Royal Coven in some way. They became friends because they met as they were like training, I guess, to become part of the coven, become official members of it. And then their lives after that kind of split off. You've got one who's left the coven for a normal life and she's become a vet, I think. You've got one who leads the coven. You've got one who, I can't remember specifically her connection to the coven anymore, but she's still kind of in it. And then you've got one who left the coven to create her own coven called Diaspora. And it follows those 4 women as they believe the fated sort of sullied child makes an appearance, and they disagree over how to deal with that situation. It follows the raising of that child, and I just really love that book, and I cannot wait to get stuck into its sequel, especially because of the cliffhangers that we ended with at the end of the first book. So yeah, I am currently 10 pages in, so I have nothing to say other than I already love it, and because it's gone, I think, back in time to talk about something in the past happening, but I can't remember. I think the birth of the twins, Kiara and the other one whose name I now can't remember, but who was the focus of most of the first book. But yeah, anyway, that's The Shadow Cabinet. I cannot wait to get stuck into it. For now, Ben and I are heading over to Cuddy Sark, which is right near Greenwich, to grab some lunch. So we're gonna go do that. And yeah, maybe I'll bring you along because I don't think I have any B-roll for this video. So sorry about that. But yeah, we're gonna go do that. I'll talk to you in a bit. Today was just to go to the Waterstones and sit and read this basically for the entire day, but then my AirPods ran out of battery, so I had to come home, and I was just gonna sit back down and keep reading because I am, what, 316 pages into the book, so I've read all of this basically today, and then I only have about 200 pages left, and I am obsessed with this. I'm loving this so much. I'm enjoying it so much. I'm having such an amazing time. So I didn't want to sit down and come and update you guys because I was just determined to just crack straight in and keep reading, but I figured I have a lot of thoughts so far, and I probably shouldn't be like introing the fact that this might be like a really long sort of book where I spend a lot of time updating you guys and then skip right to the review, because that doesn't make a ton of sense. So let's talk about what I'm thinking of this book so far. The general summary to share is that I'm loving it. I think it's amazing. I'm having such an amazing time reading it. It's Sunday today, by the way, so it's last day of the weekend, and I've just been hunkering down inside this book. The first thing I sort of wrote down in my notes about the book was that I'm finding it really interesting the way certain characters, after the events of the previous book and how like the different position that they're in now, the way they're being talked about in the book or the way they're being written about is changing slightly to make them either more sympathetic, less sympathetic, whatever it may be. Because there are some characters who are now have more of a presence in the story, so they need to be more sympathetic. They need to be a character that you need to vibe with a bit more rather than just believing everything that was said about them previously. And then there are characters where like they're changing sides a little bit and there's a massive like spin and a freaking twist shoved in there about that character casually, which we'll get into that in a second. And so they're being written about a little bit differently because they're making poorer decisions and they're making, you know, decisions that are really going to impact the witches in a way that is just not right. But yeah, like characters that were never given the time of day before, they're now being questioned and considered to find these more positive traits so that, you know, Juno Dawson can really make you fall in love with these characters despite everything that you were told in the previous book. Let's go into that bombshell twist. Chapter 20, Juno Dawson. What happened there? Chucking that bombshell on me like it's nothing, just casually, like, oh, you know this character you love? Boom. Like, we're gonna make them really, really conflicting now, and we're gonna make you question whether or not you still love them, and then we're gonna continue to do that throughout the rest of this book and make their beliefs and everything that they stand for really, really freaking questionable. And that started in chapter 20. And I was sitting in the Waterstones and I had a visceral reaction to the point where I think people looked at me like I was a nut job because I slammed my book shut and I really wanted to chuck it out the window because I was like, what the hell? No, this is not happening with a character that I love. Anyway, moving on from that, another thing that I noted down was that I really like how this book feels like it's happening in real time. It includes everything from like Brexit to like the changing prime ministers to the recent Queen Elizabeth II's passing. Well, she died recently and that's included at the beginning of this book, so it really makes it feel real and like you're someone or the reader is someone who's witnessing all of this happening as like an outsider. Like it feels like this could all be happening right now because it's literally set in the very, very present moment. Sorry, my doors are open and then I haven't cued them open with like a little doorstop thing, so now they're just like slamming every time the wind blows, so apologies if you can hear that in the background. Another thing is there's a particular perspective in this story that is really, really strange to be reading from because on one side, they're, you know, being written in a way that's making you want to befriend them and make you want to like them. And they're like the crazy friend that like ends justify the means. And they're the crazy friend that you bring along because everybody else is afraid to do what they're willing to do in order to get the desired outcome. But then you have these moments where this character just reminisces on something that they were involved in a very, very long time ago that was absolutely horrific, like a massacre or something. And you're reminded instantly in that moment, like you're jerked back into reality and going, oh my God, despite the fact that what this character is kind of trying to accomplish is a good thing, the way they're going about it is messed up and it really jolts you back into reality. It also makes you realize just how brainwashed I think they are, because I think a big part of that character's story and a big part of why people are going to be able to forgive that character in the long run is because there's going to be a serious element of brainwashing involved. There's going to be a serious element of manipulation involved because this character, despite being involved in things like massacres, is choosing in their mind to remain a step removed. Like they are so they convince themselves that like, yeah, I was there and yeah, I was part of it, but like I didn't directly murder anyone, so it's okay. So they're trying to have that semblance of peace in their mind. And that's just what makes me think they're brainwashed, because, you know, they're not taking responsibility for what's been done because they refuse to believe that that's something that they could have done. But yeah, this character's intentions kind of seem to be in the right place in terms of like protecting certain characters and taking down HMRC because of how prejudiced it is, and the wrongness and the corruption of that whole sort of system, and the wrongness and the corruption of the UK government trying to get involved in that system, which definitely happens more so in this book as well. But the way they're going about it is really wrong. And like on that note, there's this really interesting scene between that character and the new prime minister in this world, who isn't an actual prime minister. They do talk about Boris Johnson in this book, but like they don't talk about the current prime minister, Rishi Sunak. They sort of give that person another name, but you're kind of led to believe it's the same person. And Juno Dawson has done this really interesting thing where, you know, Her Majesty's Royal Coven throughout time has been known for like protecting the monarch, but then they haven't met a monarch basically since Queen Victoria, I think. Like they haven't met another monarch in hundreds and hundreds of years. And then you've got the governments like realizing all this power and all this potential that they could tap into, but these women are like, no, that's not what we're here for. But the government is slowly encroaching more and more into like their world and like slowly forcing their way in, like trespassing into this world and dropping hints about like what they could potentially do. And you know, you can't help but notice that the element of like the witchfinder thing that's in here, that being the men throughout time who have, you know, burned and massacred witches, that plot line is happening at the same time as this government is beginning to see and understand the true power of these witches and really question whether or not they should allow that power to have such independence, I guess, from the rest of the UK government and the rest of the UK power system. And I don't agree with it. I think these women are fine. I think, you know, let them be. But also it's interesting having those two plot lines going simultaneously, because it suggests this misogyny and this corruption that's very prevalent in a lot of these worlds that are very like man-led, and it's almost man-hating, but to the point where it kind of just makes the men seem like idiots. I don't know, it's interesting, and it's really pointing out the corruption, and you can definitely see which side Juno Dawson leans on in terms of a lot of these issues. And the very, very last thing I want to say is that I think it's really, really interesting that the way Juno Dawson humanizes these women as well. Like she makes them deal with very real, like everyday woman issues, like, you know, your partner cheating on you, or an adopted child feeling like they're being rejected, or feeling like they need to prove themselves, or feeling like they need to earn the love of their adoptive parent. Like very real human issues that humanizes these women and makes them seem more relatable in amongst all the like witchy issues and everything they're dealing with. And I like how that's fed in, because like I said, it makes them feel a bit more relatable, it makes them more sympathetic, it makes them feel less removed from, you know, my own human experience, because I can see all the things they're going through and relate to some of those elements. And I think that's really, really interesting. It's a really, really smart technique, I think, to really make the reader connect with the characters. But yeah, I'm loving this book so far. I don't want to keep ranting and do like a massively long update about how amazing this book is. But yeah, that's my thoughts at the moment. It's probably going to be a 5-star read. That's what I'm predicting, provided the ending doesn't just massacre the story, but I doubt that it will. It's a really, really good book so far. There's one character in here who, you know, was kind of like the moral standout, but then she's done some things that are very questionable, and she's really struggling with that, which is really interesting to sort of watch how that plays out, because she's keeping it a secret from everyone as well. And it's definitely something that could blow everything up and get her killed if people found out that this happened. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm loving this book. I cannot wait to see how this whole shitstorm kind of escalates and resolves itself by the end of the story, or if it's going to drop me in a massive cliffhanger, which I have a feeling it probably will, because second books always do. But anyway, that's my thoughts so far. I'm just going to go back to reading. I don't have any plans for this evening. Ben is out. I've got the flat to myself, so I'm going to go back to reading this book, and I will give you my final review either tonight if I finish this at a decent hour, or tomorrow morning if I finish this at a decent hour but need tons of time to process, which is probably the more likely option. Anyway, I'm gonna go read. I'll see you in a bit. Hey, I'm here to give the final update of this vlog, which is to very simply say that I finished The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. Sorry, I'm looking very, very shiny right now. And I gave it 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really good, but I will say I docked off half that star because the ending just really confused me. There was an element to that ending which kind of raised questions about earlier in the book about how, you know, this one character that had been fully in the loop of all these lies and everything was somehow able to spot the lies by the end and reveal them to everybody else. Like, how did that, what changed? How did that character know about those lies when they made their like reappearance? I don't know if it's a plot hole or if I missed something. I also did tune out a little bit towards the end of the book when this whole backstory thing was happening for one of the characters, because as interesting as it was and as great as it was to see exactly why that character made the decisions they did and how it was really rooted in feelings of inadequacy and feelings of rejection and the abuse that they'd suffered from the hands of their family and from their, you know, relationships over time. I felt it was a little bit longer and extended than it needed to be. But all in all, I thought the book was fascinating. I really, really loved the way the world expanded, both through involving other governmental organizations, the Witchfinders, and looping all of those in together with Hale, this big bad who'd been present since the first book, to really seed this thread of like misogyny throughout the entire read. I thought that was a really interesting way to thread those three organizations, I guess, together, because each on their own would never be able to defeat these witches, but together they could present a real threat. It also added this very, very interesting element to a character that we know and love, who chapter 20, that is when that reveal is made, and that tripped me up, but I did appreciate that reveal because it was just, it threw everything into complete chaos, and I thought it was fascinating. I liked the way the world expanded geographically as well, so we went further than Hebden Bridge, I think it's called, and we went around the world. We met all different groups internationally and their relationship with magic, their relationship with the covens, their relationship with everything, you know, with men, and everything was so different depending on the world. And I loved that the big bad that's kind of revealed at the end of the story really calls into question all the fretting around that everybody did in this book and the previous one, because it was kind of there the whole time and they had no idea. It was completely under their noses. I thought that was fascinating. I'm really hoping that the reveal that's kind of made at the end of the book in terms of this new character is who I want the new character to be, but knowing Juno Dawson, she's going to throw me for an absolute loop and it's going to end up being something completely different, and I'm going to like cry because I really, really want it to be this one particular character. One thing I really, really enjoyed as well is that obviously you had all these witchy plot lines happening with all the main characters, but then you had Theo, who throughout the entirety of the book was definitely involved in all the other witchy plot lines and the witchy craziness that was going on, but her focus seemed to be way more on just like really human issues, these feelings of inadequacy, feelings of rejection, feelings of like trying to prove herself so that, you know, people would love her. Just everything that she dealt with was very, very human, and it created this relatableness to her whole story. It really centered everything, I think, around the fact that these are just people at the end of the day and they struggle with things as anybody else does. I liked that Elle's issues were inherently human as well. The way obviously she reacted to them, not so human, but the core root of the issue was very, very human, and it really just centered and grounded the story, I think, in this way that was really, really interesting. But of course, the overarching plot was fascinating. The writing is always amazing. I'm always amazed by the way Juno Dawson is able to thread in very, very real life events, very, very real life situations, as well as really grounding the story with those human moments and commenting on very, very present societal issues, like how, you know, Theo talks about the fact that she was always considered weird before she had transitioned, because everybody was like, oh, you're a really feminine guy, and then after she transitioned, all of a sudden she became something desirable to people, and she was sort of treated very, very differently but equally negatively by men, and I thought that was just a really interesting thing to examine in her world. And then obviously through Leonie's perspective as well, you get to see all these different like race class elements thrown in there that are analyzed really interestingly as well. So yeah, I love this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. As I said, there were just those couple of things at the end that really just knocked it down that half star, but that is the end of this vlog. So let me know down below if you've enjoyed this video and if you've read any of the books that I read in this video and what your thoughts are on them, or just let me know what you're reading at the moment, loving it, hating it, all that kind of thing. Come and chat to me in the comments down below. I love talking to you guys and I do my best to reply to every single comment. I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do let me know by liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell all down below. It's a super, super easy way to help my channel grow, and I will see you lovely people in my next video. Bye!